Hello everybody. In today's video we are looking at my 2016 MacBook Pro, and this is a video I should have done months ago if not longer, and I feel bad for only getting to it now. This is a computer that is one of many things very generously donated by my good friend and viewer of the channel, Ava, Evangeline Dominic. And this was just such a cool gift from her, and a surprise of a gift if I remember correctly. Ava previously gave me my Mac Mini. I still use that. It's hooked up, plumbed into my main computer system. And Ava's given me a bunch of other stuff, most of which I still haven't made videos of. It's in the works. It's just one of those, it's just that kind of thing where I pretty much these days make videos of whatever my brain is most tickled by at any one point in time. But this thing's pretty cool. I mean, it's a modern Mac, still supported. It will no longer get the latest versions of Mac OS. Support has ended at Mac OS version 12. However, Apple is still updating version 12 of Mac OS, so this will get minor updates for probably a few more years, maybe 2 or 3 more years, and then that'll be it. But it's great. This thing is fantastic, and if it's not the most powerful laptop I own, it's definitely the second most powerful. I'm not sure if this or the ThinkPad T440p has more CPU power, but this definitely has the most graphics power that I've ever had in a laptop. And we'll talk about that in a bit. This is the 15-inch flavor of the 2016 MacBook Pro. Ava gave it to me with this very pretty sticker, which I like. It's got that sort of Piet Mondrian art style, so I put it right over top of the original Apple logo. So we'll just start like we usually do with the ports. We've got two, I think these are Pikachu 3 ports. I don't know, it's freaking USB-C. And you won't find a charge port on this, because this actually charges through the Pikachu port. Ava gave this to me with a very nice USB-C charger and a 6-foot USB-C cable. And that's actually how this thing charges. I normally use that charger and cable. It's always plugged in next to my bed to charge my phone, but I can use the same ones to also charge this thing, which is nice. And on this side we have 2 more Pikachu 3 ports and a headphone jack, and that's it. Great lack of ports on Apple computers, at least of this time. I think in the newer MacBook Pros now they've re-added HDMI port. But great lack of ports on these for a very expensive professional grade computer, which is kind of disappointing. But that's really the only disappointment with this thing. It's a pretty sweet computer, and honestly I should use it more than I do. I mostly use the ThinkPad T440p. I guess it's going to boot right up. I didn't mean to turn it on yet, but it automatically does that when you open it up, which is pretty cool. And actually normally, if it's turned on and you close it to put it to sleep, if it's asleep for long enough, it goes into this sort of, I forget if that's what they call deep sleep or something else. But it's just basically hibernation. But it's kind of cool because it doesn't use any battery power once it does that. And even if you leave it off like I did for a couple of months and the battery completely dies, what happens is as soon as you plug it back in, it immediately wakes up without going through the boot up procedure as if it was just sleeping. So really, I'm not sure how they're achieving that, if it's just because the SSD is so fast that it's able to load up all the memory again, but it's pretty neat functionality. We are living in the future. So I'll just put in my password here. So sort of another thing about this computer is this is one of the Apple computers that have the butterfly keyboard. I was in university when a friend of mine got, when they came out with the first MacBook, like the one just called MacBook instead of MacBook Pro or MacBook Air, This was, I don't know, 2015, 16 something, and he bought one of those MacBooks, and it was the first, I believe it was the first laptop Apple shipped with the butterfly keyboard. And my friend was just hyping up this keyboard. He was like, "Oh man, this is the all laptop keyboards are going to be like this eventually." He's a big Apple nut, and he let me try it. And the first thing I thought when I used the keyboard was that it felt very weird, and I wasn't sure if I liked it. But what you probably know most about the butterfly keyboard is that they are extremely unreliable. And sure enough, my friend, within months, if not weeks, of getting his new MacBook, he was having keyboard issues, and he ended up returning it, and I think he got a MacBook Air instead. So yeah, these keyboards, not great. Apple quit using them after only a couple of years, I think. Typical Apple, they just absolutely refused to admit that the keyboards were defective by design. And after, recalling a significant percentage of computers with defective keyboards, Apple were finally like, yeah, it sucks, and they don't use it anymore. This one's working fine. It was working fine when Ava sent it to me, but sure enough, the first time I ever turned this thing on and used it, one of the keys did not work, and Ava was kind of surprised. But she gave me a tip that ended up working, which, if I remember right, was to hold the computer upside down and spray compressed air into that key, and that's what ended up working. And it's been working fine ever since. I think once or twice I've had a key that you had to press a little harder than normal to make it work, but it ended up fixing itself after a few presses. Not good. It's a pretty terrible, defective keyboard design. However, at the moment, it has been working just fine, and it is interesting to type on. I don't find it any slower to type on than a typical laptop keyboard. It seems to work just fine. Unfortunately, of course, I don't use this thing very much. If I used this as much as I use, for example, the ThinkPad T440p, and if I was getting a normal amount of debris on this computer as a result of that, I have no doubt I would have issues with this keyboard. But all I can do is do my best. For as little as I use this thing, it's not working. It's been working good for most of the time I've had this thing, which is good. Keyboard is backlit, of course. Yeah, very pretty. Here's the trackpad. Look at this monster trackpad. It's enormous. I think there are entire laptops that have been made that are smaller than this trackpad. It's amazing. It works great. And one of my favorite things about it, from sort of an engineering perspective, is that, okay, when you click it, it feels like a click. And it feels not dissimilar to any laptop that has a trackpad like this today that doesn't have defined buttons, but the whole trackpad pushes down. But the thing is, this is not the entire trackpad clicking. When the computer's turned off and you press the trackpad, it just feels like you're pushing against a solid surface. But when the computer's on, there's this, I would basically call it a solenoid, but some sort of haptic feedback thingy underneath the trackpad, and that mechanically knocks when you push on the trackpad to simulate a click. So the trackpad isn't physically moving, but by golly, it sure feels like it does, and that's really, really cool. Ava put on these, apparently these are vinyl palm rest protector thingies, and they look nice, and I've always just left them on. I actually thought they were just part of the computer until she told me she put them on, but of course you can see the difference in color there. But yes, very nice. She suffered some damage earlier in life. There's some physical damage to the lid and the glass, and the small amount of damage to the LCD. But doesn't affect the ability to use the computer at all. Also, there's some damage that occurred since I got this thing, and I have no idea how, because nothing physical's happened to this laptop since I got it, but there's a bunch of cracks in the bottom bezel of the display here, and the pieces are actually moving a little bit. Let me bring my light in here. And iris up. Yeah, I have no idea what caused these. Not a clue. I just opened it up one day and there they were. Display is a 2880 by 1800 resolution. That's a little more than 2K resolution. So pretty amazing display. It's an LCD display. And it looks great, and that's pretty much all I can say about it. Now, let's talk about the touch bar. So, MacBook Pros from I think 2016 to 2021 had the touch bar. And then Apple got rid of it because people were just not using it as much as Apple thought they would. And I think the biggest thing was none of the third-party developers were adding touch bar support into their software programs. And so I think Apple just said, screw this, and they just got rid of it. It is certainly novel. It's pretty cool. But again, I never use it. You know, like when I'm running Google Chrome, there's a button, you know, to automatically activate the search bar so you can just start typing stuff in. There's back and forward buttons, refresh, favorites, add another tab. It's pretty cool. And I never use it because when you're like me and you use, and every other computer you use doesn't have this, your muscle memory is just to do everything on the screen. Which is too bad, because this is kind of neat, and I think if my brain was trained to memorize when I can use the touch bar, I would use it, and it would probably be faster and easier than, you know, moving the mouse to click something on the screen. But it works. Yeah, they got rid of it, so it's kind of a novelty, but nothing much more. But it's cool, though. Okay, so specs for this thing. It's got a 2.6 gigahertz i7. I forget what generation of i7 that is. Let's see if we can take a quick look, but it is quad-core. Looking on every Mac here, it's a 6th generation i7 Skylake series, 6700 HQ. And there were 3 models to choose from, a 2.6, a 2.7, and a 2.9 gigahertz. This is the base model, which I'm perfectly fine with because when you're using this thing and it heats up, it gets pretty hot on the bottom. At least if you're, you know, using it on your lap or in bed or whatever. And this thing's pretty cool. It's got 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM. And I forget, and that RAM is not upgradable. And it's got a 250 gig SSD, which is also not upgradable. Now the graphics system on this is pretty darn cool. This thing actually has 2 graphics chips. Usually it uses the built-in Intel HD 530 graphics. But if you're doing something graphics intensive, like running a game or whatever, it has a discrete graphics chip which kicks in, and that is an AMD Radeon Pro 450. And then other than that, there's not much to show. It's got a, I always want to call it an eyesight camera, but they haven't been called that for a number of years. I believe it's called the FaceTime HD camera now. It's got a webcam. So how about we do a little bit of a demonstration, and we'll see what that webcam looks like. This is a test of the webcam. It's almost certainly nothing special, but it works.
Final 4 NCAA college basketball tournament. Florida Atlantic is playing San Diego State at this hour, and later tonight, Miami plays UConn. This is NPR News. Senator John Fetterman.
I gotta talk about the speakers of this thing. This thing has the greatest speakers I have ever heard on a laptop, and not by a small margin. This thing sounds incredible. The speakers are actually placed on the top here, which is definitely something you don't see on laptops anymore. But I do believe that there is some like bass ports along the bottom here. That's what these slots on the bottom are. The bass is incredible. I've never heard a laptop have so much bass, but just the fidelity is incredible. By far, greatest speakers I've ever heard in a laptop. Really, really top notch. The battery's in excellent shape still. And of course, Macs no longer give you a time remaining, just a percentage, which is good enough, I guess. Phones have always been like that. You can allegedly replace the battery in one of these, but it is difficult to do, at least compared to other laptops. The iFixit guide is 65 steps with a rating of difficult, and by the looks of it, you need at least one semi-specialized tool, which is a suction handle. So yeah, not a fun trip there. Then again, I've successfully replaced the hard drive on a clamshell iBook before, and that's a time and a half doing that. So I guess if I could do that, I could replace the battery on this if I ever had to. Of course, like I said, I don't use this thing a ton, so I've really just got the basics on here. I've got LibreOffice, which if you don't know LibreOffice, I highly recommend it. It's a free and open source office suite. The user interface is not unlike that in older versions of Microsoft Office. It's just excellent, and of course it saves all the files in Microsoft Office compatible formats if you want it to, which is great. I thought this thing had the I thought all Macs came with the Apple Office suite, like Pages and Keynote and Numbers and all that, but they're not on this. Maybe they're freely installable, but I don't use them anyway. I've never actually used them unless it was under duress, so I'm not familiar with them at all, so I'd prefer just use LibreOffice anyway. Well, guys, I think that's pretty much all there is to show of the 2016 MacBook Pro, so generously given to me by Ava. Such a great computer, definitely the nicest laptop that I've ever owned. Really high tech, really cool stuff. It's fast as hell. It's got better graphics than anything I have except for my desktop computer. And yeah, just very, very nice to use. And if the ThinkPad T440p ever gave up, this would probably become my main laptop to use out in the kitchen. But yes, very, very generous gift indeed. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. Lots of other computer videos coming. It just all comes down to, as usual, when I feel like doing them. But there are lots in the pipeline for the future. So thank you, and I will see you in the next video.